Alright, tubes. I'm out in the garage here. It's a Thursday night. Pretty tired. Don't really feel like doing much, but I also don't feel like sitting around doing nothing. So I got a job here on the Miata I got to get done. I got to replace the O-ring on the cam angle sensor. Now I don't really need to go into a whole lot of detail about that, but now what they have is a little O-ring that keeps the oil from the cam from coming out, and over time it wears out. It's a pretty common problem. So I went ahead and I picked up a set of O-rings. You can buy it from Mazda or various other auto parts suppliers and get the specific O-ring, but it's just standard O-ring. And so I just picked up a whole set here, and I know it has the one I need, so that's what I'm going to do here.
Alright, so the first thing we'll do is we'll unplug these two wires here. The first one is our O2 sensor. Now, I'm not sure where that is supposed to be when it's stuck. I have a wideband installed as a wideband O2 sensor, and so I have a line coming out from the gauge, and I just routed it up here. So I'm not sure if it would be in the way when it's the narrowband, the stock sensor, but regardless, we got to unplug this to get this out of the way. And then there's also, of course, this here, which is the plug for the cam angle sensor itself. So we can get that out of our way and just tuck that back there. And then once that's out of our way, I'm not exactly sure what it's for, but there's this little guard here that's held on by a bolt, and so we actually have to get that bolt out. So we're going to take that bolt out. It's a 12 millimeter. Don't drop it. And then there's another nut on the back here. This one right here, it's this real long nut, and so we're going to take that out as well. Now before I go any further, I just want to mention, before you start loosening these bolts, if you don't want to retime your car, you should take this time before you loosen those bolts, and take a scribe or a screwdriver or something sharp and metal, or even maybe a piece of chalk, and make a little mark on your timing here. So that way, see, this is the cam angle sensor. This thing can rotate. That's how you set your timing. So if you want to mark your timing, you want to make a line on the sensor itself and on the block here. So that way, once you put this thing back in, you can just line them back up, and you know your timing will be wherever it was. Now obviously I'm rotating this around like crazy and I haven't made a mark. That's because I'm going to reset my timing anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and take this bolt all the way out, and there are a couple washers on it, so watch out for them. So now I'm pretty sure we should be able to pull this sensor straight out. Yep, that thing came right out of there. Now, we can probably get this out of here with some finagling. However, well, let me see. Yeah, I can get this out of here. I was considering just leaving it where it was, but if I can get it out of here, I am going to take it out so I can show you guys what's going on. So stand by here.
Alright, so I apologize for the close quarters we were in a minute ago, but I was able to get the sensor out. And so a couple things. Hopefully you're watching this full video before you attempt this yourself, because there's something important here. What you need to do is, when you pull this out, you need to notice the orientation of this little wheel here. See, this is what spins around. This hooks into the cam, and this thing spins around and tells the the computer what the position of the cam is. And so this will only go in one way. As you can see, it has these two little ears here, and they fit into slots on the cam. And so if the slots are lined up as it is now, and I try to put it in like this, it's obviously not going to work. So make sure you take note of where that is in relation to maybe a clock, 12 o'clock when you pull it out. That's what I recommend. Alrighty, got the O-ring off, and the way I did it was I just took this this little pick here, and I kind of tried to start to get it under the O-ring to pull it off, and the O-ring was so brittle that it actually just cracked right in half. And you could probably hear this thing. You probably heard it when it hit the ground. This thing is pretty brittle. So here's our O-ring assortment, and the one that we want, they call it the section, I would call it the width, but it's 1/8 inch, and the ID is 1.5 inches, and the OD is 1 3/4 inches. So if you insist upon going by part number, like the guy at the shop that sold me this did, it's an R28. So it looks like it's the same size, definitely the same thickness, and I'm pretty sure that before all these pieces started coming out of it, it was the same size. So I'm gonna go ahead and push this around onto here. I'll clean it up real good first. Make sure I get any dirt out of it. One other thing I wanted to mention is if you're using these picks here to get your old O-ring off, just be careful not to damage the surface. I mean, it's a gasket surface, and anytime you have a gasket surface, you want to do your best not to nick it up. But anyway, got the new O-ring on here. It looks like it's a pretty good fit, so I think we're ready to reinstall this thing. Now, obviously, the reinstallation is basically going to go the opposite of the deinstallation. It gets oriented somewhat about in this fashion. The connector is obviously on top. If you rotated this, you're going to have to rotate it back to about where it was. And then when you're inserting this, what you have to do is you just have to feel if it's going in easy. There might be some pressure where the O-ring is, but it should pop on relatively easily. If you have to force it on, chances are these teeth aren't lined up, and you got to try and turn it a little bit until you get them realigned. And if you have to, if it's too screwed up, you might end up having to stick a mirror back there and look at the cam and see how it's lined up, and then you can adjust this as necessary. But either way, I think I got it pretty close to where it was, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try and install it.
Alright, so as you can see here, I ended up needing my mirror here. I didn't have it lined up as good as I thought I did. And what ended up happening is I actually had to rotate it by 180 degrees because by the mirror it looked like I had it aligned properly, but I wasn't getting it. And then what I realized is I had it the wrong way, so I just turned it because it can only go one way, so I turned it 180 degrees and then it popped right in. And so now I just have to put my bolts back in. I'm going to leave both of them a little on the loose side there since I do have to set my timing. Of course, if you made a mark, just line up your mark and then you can go ahead and tighten those up all the way. But I'm going to set my timing here, so I'm just going to put them in loose. And here's another tip. This bolt here with the funny little thing on the top of it that kind of looks like a can opener, you don't actually have to take that out. I was just looking here, and the only thing that actually holds the cam angle sensor in itself is that one adjustment bolt on the side. So that one here, it might be advisable to take it out anyway just to give you a little extra space. But as far as the actual removal of the cam angle sensor, it is not necessary.
And finally, we get to use our timing light. If you're just doing this for the first time or just resetting it to stock, it should be 10 degrees before top dead center. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hold this timing light like so, and then I'm going to rotate the timing, the cam angle sensor until I see that timing mark lined up with wherever I want it to be. Alrighty, took that thing for a long test drive and parked it in the garage last night. I just backed it out, and this is the spot where it was leaking, and as you can see, it's now totally dry. So I would say that we solved the problem, and that's going to end this video. So I hope it was helpful. See you later, tubes.